smoke. Fire raged through the small village of Pine Ridge, casting long, flickering shadows against the wooden huts. Screams echoed through the narrow streets as men and women ran, trying to escape the spreading chaos. In the center of the madness, a wooden stake stood tall, and tied to it was a woman, Lady Evelyn, the town's healer. Her face, streaked with soot and tears, was twisted in terror. Around her, the villagers jeered, their faces filled with both fear and anger. "She cursed my crops," shouted a man from the crowd. "My wife fell sick after drinking her potion," another accused. The town's priest, Father Gregor, stepped forward, his hands raised for silence. "Lady Evelyn," he said solemnly, "you have been found guilty of practicing witchcraft. May the flames purify your soul." A torch was thrown onto the dry kindling beneath her feet. From the edge of the crowd, a girl barely past her 12th year stood frozen in horror. Her name was Celine Clark, Evelyn's only daughter. "Mother!" she screamed, trying to push past the villagers, but rough hands held her back. She watched as the fire climbed higher, crackling and snapping like a living beast. Evelyn's face contorted in pain, but her eyes found Celine's through the flames. With her last breath, she spoke the words that would haunt Celine forever. "Do not fear the truth, my child." Then the fire swallowed her whole. That night, as the ashes cooled and the villagers returned to their homes, Celine did not cry. Instead, she swore an oath. She would hunt those who had condemned her mother. She would hunt witches, and she would never fear the truth. For years, Celine lived on the streets, surviving by sheer will. She stole food when she had to, worked in stables when she could. But every night she remembered the fire. By the time she was 16, she found her way to the Order of Saint Armand, a group of witch hunters who served the church. It took her months to gain their trust, but when she finally stood before the Grand Inquisitor, she spoke without hesitation. "I want to join the hunt." The man, old and scarred, studied her. The life of a hunter is not an easy one. It is blood, fire, and sacrifice. Celine met his gaze. "I have already lost everything." So they trained her. She learned to fight with sword and dagger, to track the signs of witchcraft, to read the old texts that spoke of curses and demons. She learned how to resist magic, how to recognize a witch before they could strike. And when she turned 18, she became Celine the Witch Hunter. But she never forgot her mother's last words. Celine's reputation grew quickly. She was relentless, taking down witches across the land. Some were cruel, dealing in curses and death. Others she wasn't so sure about. Then came the day that changed everything. A messenger arrived at the Order's stronghold, out of breath and pale-faced. "A witch has taken hold of Ravenshire," he reported. "The Baron's son is under her spell." Celine was sent immediately. When she arrived, she expected to see a town gripped by fear, villagers cowering under a witch's rule. Instead, she found something unexpected. The town was peaceful. The people seemed happy. And the witch, she wasn't an old crone with blackened teeth or a hooded figure casting spells in the dark. She was a young woman, barely older than Celine, Seraphina. And the Baron's son, Gideon Ravenshire, was not under a spell at all. He loved her. Celine watched them from the shadows. The way Gideon looked at Seraphina was not the gaze of a man entranced by magic. It was love. True, deep love. And Seraphina, she was no monster. She healed the sick. She helped the poor. Could she really be a witch? Celine's duty was clear. The Order had sent her to burn Seraphina. But something gnawed at her. She spent days gathering evidence, watching, waiting. Finally, she confronted Seraphina in the woods, sword drawn. "I know what you are," Celine said coldly. Seraphina did not run. She stood tall, her green eyes calm. "Then kill me, if that is what you believe." Celine hesitated. A witch would have cursed her, attacked her, but Seraphina did nothing. Could the Order be wrong? And if they were wrong about Seraphina, had they been wrong about her mother? Determined to learn the truth, Celine searched the town's archives, and what she found shook her to the core. The Order of Saint Armand had executed innocent people before, including her mother. Celine's hands trembled as she read the old records. Evelyn had never been a witch. Her mother had been sacrificed for power. The Order was not hunting witches. They were hunting those who challenged the church's rule. She had been a pawn in their game. Enraged, Celine made a choice. She would not burn Serafina. She would burn the Order. With Gideon's help, Celine gathered the people of Ravenshire. She told them the truth, and they stood behind her. But the Order would not let her go so easily. They came for her at dawn, swords drawn. "Celine Clark," the Grand Inquisitor declared, "you are a traitor." The air smelled of burning wood and death. Celine clutched Serafina's hand as they ran through the dense forest, the flickering torchlight of their pursuers casting eerie shadows through the trees. The Order of Saint Armand had betrayed everything she once believed in. They were not protectors. They were murderers, branding innocent people as witches to justify their own thirst for control. Serafina stumbled, her breath ragged. "Celine, I can't." Celine hoisted the girl up, whispering fiercely, "We don't stop, not until we're safe." The village behind them burned, its people slaughtered. The Order had attacked without mercy, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. Celine had fought as long as she could, taking down many of the knights she had once called brothers. But she knew they could not win. Now she had only one goal: get Serafina to safety. They ran until the shouts of the Order faded into the wind. Then, and only then, did Celine allow herself to stop. "We need to keep moving," she murmured, scanning the darkened landscape. Serafina nodded weakly, her small frame trembling. For days they traveled through the wilderness, hiding in abandoned barns, stealing food where they could. The Order would not stop hunting them. Celine knew that, but she had made a vow to protect the innocent, to destroy the corruption within the very institution she had once sworn loyalty to. And she would not fail. They found refuge in a quiet village on the outskirts of the kingdom, a place untouched by the war between witches and hunters. To the people here, the Order of Saint Armand was a distant legend, a shadow that did not reach their homes. Celine changed her name. Serafina became her little sister. They built a life. Years passed. Celine worked as a healer, using what she had learned from witches and scholars alike. She had given up her sword, buried her past, and found something she never thought possible: peace. And in that peace, she found love. Gabriel was a blacksmith, strong and kind. He had a quiet strength about him, one that reminded her of the warriors she had fought beside in another life. But unlike them, he did not carry the weight of war in his heart. They married. They had a son. For years, the Order did not find them. The world forgot the name Celine once carried. But she never forgot. Deep inside, she knew the Order still stood. She knew they continued their bloody work. And though she had found happiness, she had not finished what she started. The day was warm. The village bustled with life. Children running through the streets, merchants calling out their wares. Celine watched her son chase after a wooden toy, his laughter bright as the morning sun. Then she heard the sound. Hoofbeats. Armored riders entered the village square, their banners bearing the unmistakable mark of the Order of Saint Armand. Celine's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Serafina's hand, whispering urgently, "Take him, run." Serafina hesitated, but she knew better than to argue. She scooped up the child and vanished into the crowd just as the knights dismounted. The villagers quieted as the Order's captain stepped forward, his voice carrying across the square. "We seek a woman named Celine, the heretic, the traitor." Celine forced herself to remain still, her heart pounding. Gabriel stepped beside her, gripping her hand. "We need to go." But before they could move, the knights seized him. Gabriel struggled, but he was outnumbered. "Celine, run!" he shouted. The captain turned, his gaze locking onto her. A cruel smile spread across his face. "We have your husband," he said, "and your child." Celine's breath caught. Her son, her world. The captain's smile deepened. "You will come with us, or they will burn." The crowd gasped in horror. Gabriel fought harder, his voice raw. "Don't do this, Celine. Don't let them win." She stared at him, at the love and fear in his eyes. And she knew. She had spent years hiding, pretending to be someone she was not. "No more." Celine took a step forward, her voice steady. "Let them go." The captain chuckled. "Oh, you misunderstand. They are ours now. If you want them back, you will come and face the order yourself." He turned his horse, signaling to his men. They dragged Gabriel onto one of the horses, his struggles in vain. A knight held her child tightly, the boy screaming for his mother. Celine's fists clenched. The order had taken everything from her once. They would not take her family. Not again. She watched as the knights rode off, the banners of the order vanishing into the horizon. Serafina reappeared at her side, her eyes wide with fear. "Celine, what do we do?" Celine turned, walking to the forge. She reached for the sword she had buried long ago, lifting it from its resting place. Her grip tightened around the hilt. She looked at Serafina, her gaze unwavering. "We finish what we started." Celine stood before the villagers, her sword gleaming in the firelight. The people she had lived among for years, farmers, hunters, and blacksmiths, now looked at her not as a healer, but as a warrior. She had told them the truth. The Order of Saint Armand was not a force of righteousness. They were liars, murderers, and cowards who had taken her family. And now she was going to bring the fight to them. "If we do nothing, they will keep taking from us," Celine said, her voice strong. "Not just my family, yours too. Anyone they deem a threat. We cannot let them rule through fear any longer." A murmur spread through the crowd. Then a man stepped forward, an old soldier who had once fought in the kingdom's wars. His name was Aldrich. "I have fought before," he said. "I will fight again." Another man, a hunter named Tobias, nodded. "I know how to track and move unseen. We can get inside before they even know we're there." One by one, more stepped forward. Strong men and women who had lost friends, family, and homes to the Order's tyranny. They did not have the armor or numbers of the Order, but they had something stronger. They had a cause. By the time the sun set, Celine had her army. They planned their attack carefully. The Order's fortress stood on a hill, surrounded by thick stone walls and watchtowers. Tobias and his hunters would sneak in first, taking out the guards quietly. Then the rest would follow, striking hard before the Order could gather their full strength. By nightfall, they were ready. The night was silent as they reached the outskirts of the fortress. The Order's banners hung lifeless in the cold wind, the torches along the walls flickering weakly. Tobias and his hunters moved like shadows, slipping through the defenses unnoticed. One by one, the guards fell without a sound. Celine and the rest of her fighters followed close behind, moving swiftly through the gates and deeper into the stronghold. They had almost reached the inner courtyard when a horn sounded. The alarm had been raised. "Move!" Celine shouted. The quiet infiltration turned into an all-out battle. Swords clashed, arrows flew through the air, and the fortress erupted in chaos. The Order's knights poured into the courtyard, their steel armor gleaming under the moon. Celine cut through them with ruthless precision, her blade flashing as she carved a path toward the inner keep, where Gabriel and her child were being held. Tobias's hunters fired arrows from the rooftops, striking down the knights before they could rally. Aldrich led the villagers in the fight, their raw determination giving them strength against the trained warriors of the Order. And from within, the Grand Inquisitor himself stepped out. Flanking him were several figures cloaked in dark robes, their eyes glowing with unnatural power. Celine's heart stopped. They were witches! The Grand Inquisitor smiled, his expression filled with cold amusement. "You came all this way," he said. "And for what? To destroy us? To save your family?" His eyes flickered with something unnatural. "You know nothing, traitor." He lifted his hand, and at his command, the witches unleashed their magic. Lightning crackled through the air, fire erupted from the ground, and a powerful gust of wind sent several of Celine's fighters crashing against the stone walls. The truth hit her like a blade. The Order had not been hunting witches to protect the people. They had been using them. The entire time they had been killing innocent men and women, people like Serafina, just to hide the fact that they themselves were consorting with the very creatures they claimed to oppose. Celine's grip tightened around her sword. "Clue, I don't care what lies you tell yourself," she spat. "You are a coward." The Grand Inquisitor chuckled. "And you are a fool." Then he attacked. The fight raged on. Celine charged straight at the Grand Inquisitor, her blade meeting his. He was fast, stronger than she had expected, but she had fought monsters before, and she was not afraid. The witches hurled fire and lightning, but Tobias and his hunters took them down with arrows tipped in silver. Aldrich and the villagers fought harder than ever, their fury unrelenting. But the Grand Inquisitor was not an easy foe. "You cannot win," he sneered, his sword clashing against hers. "You are nothing." Celine's eyes burned with fury. "No," she said, "I am justice." With a final, powerful strike, she drove her blade through his chest. The Grand Inquisitor gasped, his eyes wide with shock. "No, this is not how it ends." But it was. With a final breath, he collapsed, his body lifeless on the stone floor. The witches, seeing their leader fall, panicked. Some tried to flee. Others fought desperately, but they were outnumbered. And one by one they fell. The battle was over. The Order of Saint Armand, the real order, had been destroyed. Celine turned to the fortress. "Find Gabriel. Find my son." They searched the dungeons, breaking open doors, freeing prisoners, until at last she saw him. Gabriel, her child. She rushed forward, pulling them both into her arms. Gabriel held her tightly, whispering, "You found us." Celine smiled through the tears. "I will always find you." They stood outside the fortress, watching as flames consumed it. The Order was gone. The people they had oppressed were free. Celine, Gabriel, and their son returned to their village, along with Serafina and the warriors who had fought beside them. They had won. For the first time in years, there was peace. Celine knew that darkness would always exist, that others would try to take the power the Order once held. But she also knew that she would be there to stop them. She had finished what she started. And the world would never forget the name Celine, the Witch Hunter. Please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification button for more of these stories.